Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dan, and this is Forlorn Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got yet another event review. I feel like that is all I have been doing lately because my time has been quite tight, and I think the event reviews are the quickest go-to content that I can do editing wise, and my PC is notoriously slow. So hopefully when I have a little bit more time going forwards, I'll be able to get a bit more varied content out again. Now, the event itself is the Middle-earth Strategy Battle Games Grand Tournament of 2025 at Warhammer World. Now, this is an event that I try to get to as well as doubles, Throne of Skulls, because I find them very entertaining, and especially with Tim and the other guys that we play Middle-earth with. But normally the tickets sell out like hotcakes, so it's very hit and miss whether we get tickets for the event. But this time we were able to get 16 of the original tickets that went on sale. So I think we had them allocated all for players, but we had a few dropouts. So from our kind of hobby circle, there was 10 of us in attendance. Old players like myself, Tim, and some of the other regular guys, as well as players that were coming to their first ever tournament. I think Liam, Luke, and Paul, Tim's brother, they all had a fantastic time as well, and will most definitely be going to events in the future. So that is always good for the hobby. Now, for a bit of event admin, this was two 700-point lists, one for good and one for evil, where you would play 3 games each, and then overall the rankings were done purely on tournament scores. There was no sporting points or favourite army points available at this specific event. That's normally the Throne of Skulls. So this was just a straightforward win as many games as you can, then the higher it would be that you ranked overall. Now, I don't tend to be overly competitive, so I wasn't really fussed about this. I just wanted to go enjoy the new edition and see kind of the overall kind of impact that it has had on the game, which I will kind of reflect on at the end of this video. Now, list building is probably one of the biggest changes that we have seen in this new edition. Previously, it was a rather loose system where you had the alliance matrix, which allowed a huge variety, and in some cases, kind of unorthodox kind of looking armies, which it was open to abuse, to just get like kind of unintended kind of meta combinations, should we say. And you also had the thematic legendary legions. My main army previously was the Defenders of Helm's Deep, which was a legendary legion, and I had great fun with it as a thematic player. Now, going into this new edition, the list building is pretty much exclusively legendary legions. So it's more aimed at capturing a specific point in the films currently, and there is a kind of feeling that there is a lot missing from the game. Now, we know that the third book is coming that should fill a lot of those issues, but I'm concerned that that might not go as far as we think it will go, but that is a whole other video in itself. But when it came to assembling armies for this project, I was like, I couldn't rely on my previous collections to have variety, because I'm a predominantly good-sided player, and the way that they've changed army building, even though it doesn't necessarily look that difficult, and much changed. Um, Whilst I was looking at my collection, it was like kind of war gear changes and having to break models or repaint new models for it. So my Defenders of Helm's Deep army, for example, is redundant because I have all throwing spears and I'm not going to buy another um, X amount of Royal Guard to paint when I already have the numbers, or break them to change the weapons because of the throwing spear limitations, for example. So I was kind of stuck looking at my collection and having the Napoleonic event just a few weeks beforehand really gave me a burnout in terms of painting. So I didn't want to have to paint much. So for my good army, the only kind of viable option I had, which was still a favourite for me, was to look at the garrison of Dale. Now I've had a Dale army since Dale came out, and they were painted for me by my good friend James Lamin, who is quite often a regular in the best army nominations and stuff because he does, he's done a truly spectacular job on them for me. So hopefully I will be able to add more to that for bigger games. Um, but I was able to tailor my existing list with slight changes to suit for this event, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have been having to paint when I wasn't really in the mood for painting, which is always a negative experience when that happens. So, the good army list is centered around Girion with a few captains, and then the rest of the points divided by the points of Warriors of Dale with obviously their varied equipment. Now, it's roughly a third armed with shield and spear, a third armed with shields, and a third armed with bows. Two banners just to round it off because banner BPs are quite significant. But this was a list that I had actually thought about writing and was quite happy with, like the kind of my thought process with it, with my plans going forward into the event, and I was quite confident that this would be the list that would give me results on the tabletop. In contrast, my evil army was a bit of a joke list because I do not have currently an evil army that is usable in the game besides Sauron and some trolls. Now, it seems scary and it can be hard hitting, which, it's always intimidating going up to a table and seeing Sauron and three trolls, but on the whole, I think it's quite a fun list to play against because it tests you to manage kind of the game, and it's also, the scenarios hinder it quite badly. So I don't really expect much going into the game except for I want to try and have fun and for my opponent to have fun playing against it. And there was literally zero tactical choice for this list. Besides, I'm just going to go forwards and try and kill as much as I can until I am killed. Whereas my Dale army actually relied on me thinking about tactics, positioning, and like the kind of the synergies that go together, which obviously in the army lists have been given buffs. I think I remembered the re-rolling to hit against monsters, but Girion giving re-rolling ones to Warriors of Dale, I don't really think I used much, but it's the first kind of few games of this edition, so I'm sure that all these special rules will kind of be easier to remember over time. But I will reflect a little bit more about that at the end of the video. Now, when I attend events, I like to set a prediction or like kind of like a minimum kind of target that I would be happy with in terms of win ratio, just as a kind of like personal challenge to see if I can meet that target. Now, for this event, I was quite unoptimistic with my chances with my evil army, so I decided to set a bar of 2 wins for the event, because I would be relying heavily on my Dale army, which I was quite confident about, but I didn't want to have the pressure of going, I must win, I must win, I must win, for like a silly little personal challenge, because my overall motivation for playing Middle-earth is to have fun and to enjoy playing with other people. So, game 1 was against Lee and his muster of Isengard. I think it's the muster of Isengard list. It's the one where Saruman gets his spooky lightning effect. And we were playing the scenario Reconnoiter, where we had to get off the opposing board edge and turned up randomly from our own board edge. Now, it was concerning that I was outnumbered with my Horde Dale army, so I wanted to utilise my shooting to whittle down the numbers as quickly as I could to make the clash more equal, especially with Uruk-hai being strength 4 and my poor defence of 5 meant that I would be going down a lot quicker than he would in combat. Now, things started off terribly for me, as my archers had very little effect, whereas 2 Uruk-hai scouts and 2 hillsmen managed to outkill my shooting with their shooting for the first couple of turns, and the lines crashed, and I was not confident really at all with this. I thought, I'm going to be hit here and he's just going to go right through me. However, the luck swung completely towards me in that combat, and the mob, like the kind of cluster where our lines clashed, was pretty much even in terms of the initial contact, and then I think after 2 turns there was a lone hill tribesman or wildman left standing that Girion was kind of looking menacingly at, and from there it was just a case of getting a couple of minis off the board and holding the line where his breakthrough party was trying to get through. He had some very bad luck with his Grabane, which was cut down by another Dale warband. The lightning, which I didn't kind of know what to expect with it, so I kind of set up in a rank and file kind of way, and from I think the 8 warriors of Dale and the captain that it hit, his rolling was very unlucky, and he only caused a single wound on the captain. So that could have been devastating for me, because it was that warband that kind of plugged the gap that he was trying to break through. And I think if he'd have managed to whittle it down with that lightning, it would have been a much closer game. But it was great fun. Lee was a fantastic opponent, and I managed to walk away with a 15-1 win for the first game. Game 2 saw the first outing for Sauron and the Trolls against Demetrius and his Defenders of the Hornburg army. Now, this was an incredible looking army. He used all the new Rohan range and had even done a fantastic conversion of Leaf from one of the plastic hobbits from the Treebeard set, I think, or was it Mary from Eowyn? Either way, it looked incredible. And the scenario was destroy the supplies. Now, as I only had 4 models, I was not optimistic at all that I would be able to get any of his supplies, because I was outnumbered quite a lot, and I knew for certain that my supplies would go at some point in the game. So in order for me to kind of have any chance, I needed to get his leader, break him, and be 25%ed before he could get all of my supplies to have any chance of getting something from this game. Now, I played it very aggressively. I used the drum and pushed forwards from, so I was in his face. He took a troll down to 1 wound from shooting in the first turn, so I was kind of quite happy with that. And then I managed to hit the lines, and that was where it kind of was getting a bit interesting. I was like, "Oh, I might have a chance here to get something." I tried to get a wound on Hera with magic, which he did save with fate, and I was kind of just became obvious that I was going for the leader. And then he um, got a heroic combat with Helm and Hera together, where he killed a troll and then combated into another one to kill it. So I had Sauron and a troll left, and at this point I was like, right, if I can kill Hera, I and then lose a troll, I will get something from this game. But that was the point where the game completely swung away from me, because Sauron was just fed a warrior of Rohan at a time, and then surrounded by a lovely little kind of ring of Rohan warriors, and obviously with limited might, couldn't call the moves to get out. My rolling was not the best for this game. I think I'd used it up in the combats the game before, and couldn't even barge my way out because Demetrius had expertly positioned his little ring so that barging wasn't really worth it. And it was just a case of waiting for him to take my supplies and seeing the game out. And it was a fun game. It was quite predictable, and I think Demetrius played it in a way that, you know, these games needed to be played, and was a good sporting opponent, and didn't make it miserable for me, but made it entertaining and had a laugh, despite knowing that the outcome was kind of inevitable. And in the end, I lost that 14-0. Going into game 3 against Jamie was the Fog of War scenario, where you had to pick a terrain piece and then a hero to keep alive and a hero to kill. Now, Jamie was using Ugluk's scouts, so for the second time with my Horde Dale army, I was outnumbered. Now, this is a running theme of the weekend. Normally, I like to be Dale because I outnumber my opponents. However, that was not to be for this game. And I decided to protect my generic captain, which was the one that was modelled with a bow, because the previous edition Dale captains could take bows, but we'd discussed it, and like that's the easiest way to kind of clarify them as what they were armed with. So I was protecting that captain. I was trying to kill his converted orc captain that was from a taskmaster, and I was then trying to get into the terrain piece at like the far left of his deployment zone from my perspective. And in the end of the game, obviously I'm talking about this retrospectively, so I know what his targets were. His target was my left hand building, which was like the big one, which I had my archers on top of. He was trying to kill my bow captain, and to protect his I can't remember who he was trying to protect, but I think it ran away. So it was another orc captain. Um, and then, yeah, so going into the game, I set up quite defensively. He had a drum and march and an 8-inch move for the Uruks. So I didn't really get much shooting in, but it became very obvious quite early on who my target was, because I was like, I'm just going to shoot him and get him out the way. Um, so he was trying to move him to protect him, and we had a good laugh about, oh, this isn't obvious at all, and that kind of thing. And became very clear that he was also trying to go for my bow captain and defend my bow captain. Um, and then we had quite a good kind of moving around. He was very aggressive in terms of like the Urukais pushing forwards right up, and I was trapped in my deployment zone. But I was able to get a few models around the back, including some archers, which were crucial towards the end game. And like the lines hit, and again I was very concerned because I hadn't killed enough from shooting, and that. But the fact that Warriors of Dale now get a +1 to wound when defending in their own deployment zone was massive, and I cannot understate how important that was. It meant that I was wounding him on 4s, which kind of gave me that kind of trade-off where he was killing me on 5s, I was killing him on 4s. We had the same fight value, and so it was, it started to swing very quickly towards Dale again, which the dice seemed to hold for my good army, which was something. And he had kind of managed to pinpoint like what terrain piece he was going for, and it became very clear that the clustering was towards that and the captain. So I was able to kind of move my lines around the back, and I'd got 5 archers in a position where he'd left the taskmaster at the back to make him go towards the terrain piece so he could climb up next turn. And as luck would have it, he was the only model that was not engaged in combat that I could shoot at. And I'd rolled the dice, and I got 2 hits, and I was like, oh, I'd taken his fate off him last time, so I needed 2 wounds to kill him. So I was like, oh, I've got 5 dice. Let's hope that I can get it. And then I rolled the 2 hits, and I was like, oh, let's hopefully I can get a wound. And I rolled both the dice, and they both went under 2 different buildings, and I couldn't see them. And I was like, oh, it's one of those. It's that added suspense, and that lifted up the first building. It was a 6, and I was like, oh, starting to hope, but like really, it's a fool's hope. It's not going to happen. Lifted up the second building for another 6, and I'd managed to snipe out the my target to kill, and that's when Jay was like, oh, it's like, oh, it started to be even more aggressive towards my captain, trying to get him, and I just don't think the dice was with him. He had me trapped with Ugluk, a couple of Urukai, a couple of Orcs, so they were getting the animosity, and rolled all the dice, and I shielded. I think I won the roll, and he was incredibly unlucky to only cause a single wound to the captain, which then meant that we both had our terrain pieces. I had killed and protected my targets, whereas he had not killed or protected his target, which resulted in an 8-4 win for the Dale. So I was incredibly happy to finish the day 1 with 2 wins and a loss, matching my target set for the event, and I couldn't have asked for a better opponent in Jamie, because that game was a cracker of a game to finish day 1 off with. And overall I'd had 3 fantastic opponents in 3 great games to start the event off with. We decided as a group not to go to the quiz because we'd been to it before, and we just wanted to get back, have a rest, have something to eat, and then get ready for day 2. Day 2 started off with another outing for Sauron and the Trolls against Jason's Arathorn's Rangers, or whatever the pre-Aragorn Grey Company is called. Now, this was the domination scenario where you had 5 objectives, and it was one that on paper I wanted to avoid at all costs with my evil army, but these things happen. But going up against a small elite army was probably one of the more favourable matchups for me. So I was quite happy with this draw, and Jason seemed to be an excellent opponent, and we had a great laugh. The game started off smoothly with his shooting doing next to nothing, even with all the might and the heroes, and then I was able to get into combat in quick time. I got Sauron into Arathorn, trying to go for the quick leader kill, and that is where it all went downhill. My trolls could not roll higher than a 4 all game, and when they won combats, they very rarely wounded. Sauron managed to take 2 wounds off Arathorn, and then Arathorn ran away to try and live another day, and yeah, the dice were tragic for me, but we had a very entertaining game. I was muttering about sacrifices that I needed to make to improve my dice skills, and it was a very quick game. I think we were done in 24 minutes, because that was how long it took him to kill 3 trolls. And yeah, a very short, fun, and brief game, which gave us plenty of time to wander around the gallery and see how the others from our collective groups were getting on. And in the end, it was a 6-1 loss. Now, game 5 saw me play Jason's hobby group mate, Ryan, and the scenario was to the death. Now, this was one that on paper was excellent for my evil army, and we'd had a bit of chat. Jason popped up and was like, "You better roll better than you did against me," and that kind of thing. And I was like, hopefully all my bad luck has been removed, and I'd be able to kind of move forward and get something out of the game in the scenario that was this list's one strength. I was playing the Reclamation of Osgiliath list because I draw my evil army, and yeah, suffice to say, my luck against Jason in the previous game was of a much higher standard than the luck that I experienced in this game. And I don't think me and Ryan stopped laughing after we hit combat, because it was just words cannot describe it. I mean, normally I'm the one mocking Tim in our games for his appalling dice, but for some reason my evil army in this event just did not want to roll dice, and it was just hilarious. And the game lasted slightly longer. It was 27 minutes, so Jason got bragging rights for the quickest game against me. But it was a very convincing 18-0 loss in favour of the Reclamation of Osgiliath, because Boromir and Faramir just did the business, and their synergies worked. They almost killed Sauron, but luckily the ring was able to save him. And then to cap it all off, in the last combat of the game, Sauron could not win, against a lowly warrior of Minas Tirith. So that pretty much summed the game up. But it was still a very thoroughly entertaining and enjoyable game, and Ryan was an excellent opponent. So, going into the final game of the event, I was on 2 wins and 3 losses. Now, this coincided with my good and evil split, which was my kind of thoughts beforehand. And the final game was the Maelstrom scenario, and it was against Andy, who was the ringer player that was on the staff, and he was using Goblin Town. So yet again, my Horde Dale army was outnumbered, but this time my archery worked fantastically, and I'd almost broken the Goblin Town army before our lines even clashed. Now, as a ringer, Andy wasn't really approaching this in a competitive kind of mindset. He said, "I just want you to have fun," and that was very much the context that we'd approached the game. We just wanted a fun, easy game to finish the event off, and it was very entertaining. We had some kind of combats going on with the various goblin captains, where the golem could be more deadly than the goblin king, which it turns out he could. And we just played it in a very good-natured, easygoing last game of the event. And I think there was about 8 or 9 goblins left, including the goblin king, at the end of the game, and it resulted in a 17-0 win for Dale. So, I'd surpassed my expectations. I'd got 3 wins and 3 losses, which is on track of my normal overall tournament thing. All of them won by my good army. And, going forward, that was kind of thinking back rather, that was kind of the outcome that I was not expecting, but realistically, I was looking at my top end bar because, as I said, the good list was a list that I'd actually thought about and put effort into writing the list, whereas my evil army was just thrown together because I just couldn't be bothered to paint anything after the Napoleonic event, and I wasn't expecting much. So it went as well as it could have gone for me, I think, besides the atrocious dice that I had with my evil army. And that was like the theme. It was great fun. My good army had good luck when it mattered. My evil army had atrocious luck throughout. And that made it entertaining when I lost, because it was just hilarious. And I found myself kind of going, "Oh, I'll be happy with a 4," and then "Oh, I've rolled a 3 on 3 dice." And it was just moments like that that made the weekend, because it was hilarious. And I think overall I finished 43rd in the middle of the pack, so I was happy with that. Out of the group of the 10 of us that went, I think I was 4th. So I was also quite happy with that. And most importantly, I finished many places above Tim, so that's always a bonus for me. So, having been to the first event of the new edition, what are my thoughts of the changes? Now, from a gameplay perspective, the core mechanics of the game are largely the same. There's a few things which are like intelligence that I don't think came up at all for me, really. But it plays the same, it feels the same. It's a great game as ever. The biggest difference, I think, for me is the disparity at the moment between good and evil. I think all 10 of us were that I talked to, were all kind of noticing that kind of trend in our games. And I think mainly it's down to the shift of list building being more thematic and centered around different events to recreate certain scenes, because the special rules that you get from the characters or the lists are, even though they're suitable and thematic for the characters, they have a larger than I think intended um, effect on the game from my experience. Um, and I think that's mainly because the currently evil lack very many named characters. I think I can think of maybe a dozen or so. But these characters are also kind of one or two list um, options. So I think like the Witch King is the only one that can be in more than two lists. I think Wolf and General Targ can be in two lists as well. Um, but in terms of that kind of flexibility, it's just not as prevalent in evil lists at the moment, with the benefits that they bring. Whereas good armies have the opportunity to stack all these characters. So, like, you take Defenders of the Pelennor, where you can have Aragorn, you have Theoden, Éomer, Legolas, Gimli, King of the Dead, all that kind of together leads to not only powerful heroes, but a multitude of special rules that also stack on those characters. And I think, whilst it's not game breaking, I think at the moment that's where the imbalance lies, is in the ability of the named characters um, that they can have on the game. Obviously, it's a dice game, so some games can. I mean, after my performance with the Evil Army, yeah, it's a dice game. But I think the third book hopefully will introduce more evil named characters, and you'll see factions that can have access to several named characters. I think the Easterlings is one to look at, with Ritabi, Brogir, the Dragon Emperor. I think that will be as strong as ever with the synergy available to it. But other lists will be padded out, like hopefully, like the Gothmog's Legion will be padded out a bit with some more named characters to give it a bit of oomph. Harad, for example. Uh, these are the things I think that will help bridge the balance in the game. But there are obviously lists that work well without named characters. There are lists that rely on named characters. That's how it's always been and how it will always carry on to be, I would hope. So overall, I think the event has kind of helped loosen any kind of concern that I've had for the future of the game with the changes to the edition. Although I still maintain that I'm concerned that the third book won't go far enough that people expect for list building. I'd be interested to see how they go about it, having seen the article where they have released the new factions that they're going to be putting, and how the profiles for the more kind of unique units that aren't in the main army book, how they slot into existing army lists. Because obviously there are characters such as the fiefdoms, uh, and Imrahil, for example, and Forlong that were at the Pelennor. So it'll be interesting to see how they fit in to that list, or if they can take them at all, because in the books they are an integral part of that rescue mission. Um, so time will tell, but I'm more optimistic and positive for the game than I was going into the event. Um, it was good to see the community enjoying it and thriving as ever, which is always a benefit as well. So, without rambling on too much, I think there are, as always, there are things that can be done to improve it. Um, there was a big shift towards evil in the last edition. I think in this edition the pendulum has swung towards good, maybe too far, but I think that's in the nature of the changes that they've made. It's unavoidable because in the end there is a lot more narrative towards good than there is evil in the book, so you're going to have that kind of disparity. So I hope I haven't bored you all to death, and I hope to see you in the next one. Hopefully, we will be um, kicking off some War of the Roses, perhaps, um, but it will be a couple of weeks because I've got quite a lot on in my personal life at the moment, so I'm not being able to record as much as I would want to. So, until next time, have a good one. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, enjoy your hobby.